InvestorIdeas.com Podcasts.
Good afternoon and welcome to another episode of InvestorIdeas.com Podcasts. Today's podcast is sponsored by Cannabis Swiss Corporation, trading on the OTC as CSUI, a fully licensed cannabis cultivation and distribution company in Switzerland for recreational tobacco products and medical CBD oils. And the company's products are laboratory tested to ensure that the end users have access to a standardized, safe, and consistent product. And Cannabis Swiss Corp currently sells via distribution network of Swiss retailers and online shops under the retail brand Alpine Cannabis. In today's podcast, we're going to be looking at a few public company announcements from PRMO Nutraceuticals Incorporated, trading on the CSE as PRMO and the OTC as BUGVF, ENW Corporation, trading on the TSXV Venture as ENW, Isracan Biosciences Incorporated, trading on the CSE as IPOT and the OTC as ISCNF, as well as Fire and Flower Holdings Corporation, trading on the TSX as FAF and the OTCQX as FFLWF. So first today, starting with PRMO Nutraceuticals, who announced entering into a non-binding letter of intent with Medcan Biotechnologies Incorporated, who will act as a consultant to conduct a chemotyping or a chemical analysis and a genotyping genetic analysis study of up to 5 strains of psilocybin mushrooms, commonly known as magic mushrooms. Now, Health Canada has recently shifted towards psychedelic-assisted psychotherapies in safe, controlled environments as acceptable treatment options. And pursuant to Section 56 exemption from the Canadian Drugs and Substances Act to treat anxiety association diagnoses, Medcan Biotech will apply to Health Canada to receive approval under the Controlled Drug and Substances Act to allow Medcan Biotech to conduct research in order to effectively standardize the extraction of psilocybin from mushrooms. Now, the Health Canada permit by Medcan Biotech will allow it to develop and license intellectual property exclusively for further production development by PRMO via chemotyping and genotyping of 5 different mushrooms to understand their properties. And Medcan Biotech will process to patent methods of analysis and results on behalf of PRMO, whereby data generated will be used in the production of nutraceutical products. All IP and products developed as a result of the analysis will become the property of PRMO Nutraceutical for their exclusive use. And psychedelic research focused on psychedelic medicine and psychedelic drugs have demonstrated that these substances have potential for treating ailments including anxiety, addiction, depression, substance dependency, attention deficit hyperactive disorder, and even post-traumatic stress disorder. And the data can then be used to generate premium natural health mushroom nutraceutical products, and genotyping can then be used for the identification and labeling of different varieties of psilocybin mushrooms. So PRMO Nutraceuticals is working with Medcan Biotechnologies just to get their chemical and genotyping analysis complete. Obviously, there's a lot of different companies coming out now into the psilocybin space, and this is going to be the main thing, is getting the data, getting the analytics, and getting the basic dosing and extraction process down to a simple science. Again, as you can go back and listen to some of the interviews we've had in the past with different psilocybin-based companies, they've all talked about the same thing, which is that right now, even though there has been tons of information about psilocybin mushrooms over the last 40, 50 years, unlike with cannabis, where you had pretty much recreational use in certain areas, and again, continuing research and studies going on in Israel, with psilocybin research, it's been a little less controlled and a little less continued. Obviously, there's a lot of shamanistic cultures who have continued using magic mushrooms for a long time, but it hasn't really hit the general zeitgeist of the public in a lot of areas for quite some time. And so there isn't a lot of standardization of methodology. There isn't a lot of consistent dosing. There isn't even a lot of consistent information about strain genetics and chemical makeup. So for a lot of these people who are coming into this space, the information they have access to is very limited. There are only a few real mycologists out there who are really focused on the psilocybin mushrooms that would actually, again, be able to provide conclusive data and real analytics. So I think that that's the main thing for all of these companies right now, is to get enough research and data out there to better push for legalization and more research exemptions and more exemptions for medical patients, which is definitely, you can see that both Health Canada and most of the governments in different parts of the world are definitely trying to push this quite quickly. Health Canada especially is pushing this through much faster than they've dealt with cannabis prohibition in the past. So it'll be interesting to see how fast this develops. And obviously, it's going to really come down to companies like PRMO Nutraceuticals and Medcan Biotechnologies, to name a few, obviously, that will have to help provide this data and consistency of strain knowledge to the regulation makers, basically, so we can actually have these products out to the market. Looking next at ENWave Corporation, who announced today that it signed a technology evaluation and license option agreement with an American industrial hemp producer to evaluate the potential commercial use of the company's proprietary radiant energy vacuum, or the REV trademark dehydration technology. And during the term of the agreement, the hemp producer will pay a monthly evaluation fee and have the exclusive option to license trademark technology for the use in the states of Illinois to dehydrate hemp products for CBD extraction. Now, if REV demonstrates its proven ability to produce dried hemp with zero degradation of CBD content, the hemp producer will then be able to leverage ENWave's patented dehydration platform to improve processing efficiencies and lower their cost of CBD production. If the evaluation is deemed successful by the hemp producer, ENWave will aim to sign a royalty-bearing commercial license agreement and an equipment purchase agreement with the hemp producer committing to the purchase of REV trademark machinery. ENWave holds a robust intellectual property portfolio spanning numerous international markets and has licensed REV trademark technology to more than 40 companies operating in 18 countries worldwide. So it's been a little while since I've talked about ENWave. They're a company that shows up every now and again, a couple of months. Mainly, they've just been getting food deals over the last couple of months to the last year. They sort of popped up in the cannabis space. There was a lot of speculation that their REV trademark technology would be utilized by a lot of these companies early on. It wasn't adopted. Only a few small companies used it. Difficulty is deterioration and degradation of the product inside. So even with the REV trademark technology, I believe there was some issues when it came to THC bud, in that you still had degradation into CB. And that was an issue for some of these companies. I think it might be different with the CBD products. And also in general, it's, again, one of those types of technology utilizations that I've talked about before that's very useful to the cannabis industry. But again, for a lot of these large-scale producers, they've already built their facilities. They've already utilized certain drying or whatever methods. And a lot of them just aren't willing to spend the money now to change a lot of their infrastructure and change a lot of their methodologies later into the game. So this is probably a newer American industrial hemp producer. I would hope so. And hopefully they do get good results for this, because obviously, again, when you're looking at the Canadian market and even the US market, drying and product consistency and degradation are still huge issues facing the cannabis sector today, especially when you look at the overall supply chain. It's very difficult to maintain stability if you can't really maintain the product storage options, which are very difficult for a lot of these companies. What you're seeing right now is a lot of fresh product coming onto the market, which is really good for the consumer, but it's really difficult to manage from the business side of things. And again, there then is a lot of lost product, which we still have seen year after year from this cannabis industry as it's been legalized. As much as there's tons of product being produced, a lot of it that ends up to the market doesn't quite meet the standards that we're still expecting. And as well, a lot of it doesn't end up on the market because it can't meet those standards. And again, there's issues with packaging, with drying, with storage, and the overall transportation. So hopefully, whether it's ENWave Technology specifically or a company like them, that can be resolved and solved and moved forward in the industry, so that way we don't have these same storage issues. Next, looking at Isracan Biosciences, an Israeli-based company focused on becoming a premier, low-cost, high-quality cannabis producer, who announced that the government of Israel has officially enacted the legislation for the export of medical cannabis, clearing the way for the sales abroad that the government expects could generate more than $273 million in annual sales. Now, the economy minister, Eli Cohen, gave final approval for the exports more than a year after the cabinet initially supported the legislation, and within Israel, medical use of cannabis is permitted, with recreational use largely decriminalized. Now, the ministry reports that 70,000 Israelis currently use medical cannabis, consuming an estimated 25 tons per year. And if this growth trend continues, Israel could see a market of over 200,000 medical patients consuming 85 tons per year within the next 2 years. Now, as reported by Reuters, Haggett Weinstock, co-founder of the Weinstock Zahiv & Co. law firm and a pioneer of cannabis regulation in Israel, stated, "There are many investments that we are expected to see happening now because investors were waiting for this approval." Now, according to other recent reports, the Israeli Ministry of Health has launched a new pilot program whereby medical cannabis producers will be approved to export medical cannabis, subject to concurrent product availability to Israel patients and a fixed discount price per gram, so $5.50 per gram for patients over 21 years old and $4 per gram for patients under 21 years old. There's also previous reports, and you can click the link attached in the article if you choose to do so, have outlined how Israel has struggled with cannabis product shortages, as well as complaints about price and quality, which led to the country becoming one of the world's largest importers of medical cannabis. Now, the pilot program is planned for an initial 3-month period, during which the specific medical cannabis products to be provided in Israel are made available for export at an individual producer's discretion. Now, company CEO from Isracan Biosciences, Matt Charterton, noted, "Today's news is a win-win for both the medical patients in Israel and the domestic producers. Export licensing will be a huge economic driver for the licensed producers and an incentive for investment that should spur rapid growth across this industry. The government's plan to ensure subsidies for the domestic market will see supply finally catch up to demand, along with stabilization of the supply chain through improved product processing and quality assurances that's required for entry into export markets. It's been an extensive process to get to where we are today, but with today's announcement, we find ourselves in great shape as we continue to build out our company and shareholder value in Israel." So again, I've talked a lot about the huge potential of the Israeli cannabis market. Now you see it being pushed forward as well. Again, I think the two international markets to really pay attention to over the next couple years will definitely be Israel and South America, Colombia specifically out of South America. Again, there are other countries that are coming on board, Brazil, Peru, but they're doing it a little bit slower, a little bit higher regulations, and a little bit more of a monopoly when it comes to the licenses that have been granted. Also, I would say not the same sort of government approval and government strategies. Again, Israel and Colombia seem to be very much on point when it comes to focusing on how the world is reacting to the cannabis industry, what sort of licenses they need to grant, and to actually help and aid their cannabis industry within their own countries. Again, you're seeing in lots of other parts of the world where cannabis is still coming along, there still is a lot of push and shove from the government. Whereas, again, in Colombia and Israel, they do seem to be coming around to the idea that this needs to be an industry they support in every way possible and embrace. And again, with this recent news from Israel, you can definitely tell that that section is going to start booming in the next couple of months to the next year, especially again with exportation into Europe and even into other parts of the world. It's going to dramatically start affecting prices of the global cannabis industry. Going to start really impacting eventually the CBD space, depending on how much hemp can be produced from Israel as well. But definitely is something that's supporting that this is going to be a big market to pay attention to and will start impacting the global cannabis sector. And I think that's only really a few months away before you start to see more announcements that support that very concept. Lastly, today looking at Fire & Flower Holdings Corp., who announced the launch of a private label brand collaboration with Decibel Cannabis Company Incorporated's premium cannabis brand Quest. Now, the brand collaboration is anticipated to launch on October 15th in the province of Saskatchewan, and Decibel will manufacture, package, and ship the private label products to Open Fields Distribution, which is Fire & Flower's wholly owned Saskatchewan distribution business. And the initial product launch will include a pre-rolled format that the company may look to expand the offering to other products in the future. And Sparks Perks members will receive special members-only pricing and exclusive early access when the products are available in retail stores this week. We are pleased to announce this curated product offering to our customers. Quest products are in high demand in the premium cannabis product category, and our collaboration on this private label products will deliver high quality and value to the Fire & Flower customer, shared Nadia Vatavas, the Executive Vice President of Operations and Chief Financial Officer of Fire & Flower. Now, our ability to work directly with licensed producers throughout a wholesale business, Open Field Distributions in the province of Saskatchewan, demonstrates how this province is leading the Canadian cannabis industry, and we believe that other provinces should look to how this model can best serve consumers and help eradicate the illegal and unregulated market. Now, Decibel is excited to partner with Canada's leading retailer to launch a series of premium pre-rolls exclusively for Fire & Flower customers, said Adam Coates, the Chief Grow Officer of Decibel. And this collaboration allows Quest the opportunity to provide craft cannabis to a group of new customers while also offering value to Fire & Flower Spark Perks members. So this is one of the first times we've seen this within the Canadian market, which is actually a collaboration launch between a retailer and a producer. Again, this is only really allowed through Saskatchewan's very unique cannabis setup that they have right there. And it is a really good testament to other provinces should start looking at this retail model and realizing the potential for this, not only for, again, tax options, but also for the overall success of the industry. Again, you look at BC, there's a lot of hampering regulations that really have caused a lot of issues and a lot of slowness on the build out of the cannabis infrastructure and industry within BC. Ontario's had a lot of the same issues. Saskatchewan, Alberta, Manitoba taken very different approaches. Saskatchewan, specifically as somewhere that no one really expected to become a cannabis hub, has really done a great job of building out their cannabis industry, providing jobs, and having a very well-established retail infrastructure to provide not only better products, but better price points that can compete with other provinces. It's one of the best areas to go to get cannabis right now in the country, which is sort of laughable when you consider the social dynamics of each of these provinces pre-cannabis legalization. But definitely is going to be something that hopefully other Canadian provinces eventually allow and adopt. But for right now, it will be a significant advantage for Fire and Flower and some of the retail establishments that are built in Saskatchewan, and maybe one of the differentiators between why they're more successful in that area. Also could be a great place to start having pre-launches of these products before they go into other markets. And I think there's a lot of potential there for retailers and producers to be co-branding and co-partnering together. We've seen this in other markets in the States. But again, for Canada, this is sort of a new venture, and hopefully it does succeed and again pushes some of those other province and regulators within Canada to start paying attention to what is successful and what is actually going to help improve the cannabis industry as opposed to hamper its growth. That's all for today's podcast. And once again, today's podcast was sponsored by Cannabis Swiss Corporation, trading on the OTC as CSUI, a fully licensed cannabis cultivation and distribution company in Switzerland for recreational tobacco products and medical CBD oils. That's all for today's podcast. Podcast is now a certified word trademark on the blockchain through Cognate Incorporated CM certification. InvestorIdeas.com podcasts are also available on iTunes, Spotify, Google Play Music, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Spreaker, and TuneIn. If you'd like to be a guest or sponsor of this podcast, please contact InvestorIdeas.com. Investor Ideas reminds all listeners to read our disclaimers and disclosures on the InvestorIdeas.com website, and this podcast is not an endorsement to buy products or services or securities. Investors are reminded that all investments involve risk and possible loss of investment. Investor Ideas does not condone the use of cannabis except where permissible by law. Our site does not possess, distribute, or sell cannabis products.